Ahoy, ladies, gents, and NBs. You have entered the Last Save Lounge. Last Save Lounge is a weekly interview podcast where we dig into the stories, memories, and moments behind our favorite games. I'm your host, Aaron Turbo Hoodie Amendola, and I'm so happy you're here. Every game has a story, and this is Richard Lovejoy's. Richard is a theater and film artist, writer, and podcast hailing all the way from New York City. Rich, how you doing?
Doing okay today, all things considered, as okay as any of us can be in this moment in time. But, making things happen. I'm really glad to be here, and I'm excited to share some game memories with you.
Yeah, man, me too. I feel similarly. There's just a lot going on right now. So talking about games for a solid 45 minutes sounds like a good panacea.
Yeah.
I learned panacea because of Final Fantasy. A lot of my knowledge comes from video games. Let's just say I never went to school and I grew up in Squaresoft games. Rich, are you
Do you light fires with a Faraga?
Right now, if you look outside in Chicago, it's Blizzara, just regular blizzard. I need something to happen because I cannot take negative 20 wind chill every single day. Rich, I want to start off the show by asking you said you're doing okay. Is there any game right now, anything you're playing that's sparking joy for you?
Yes. I just completed pretty much on 2 marathon sessions with like a couple very quick sign in and sign out because life stuff was happening, but 2 big back-to-back sessions on Perfect Tides Station to Station, which is a sequel to Perfect Tides, which is a game I did not play. It's a point-and-click adventure game, which I think will be relevant later on in the show. But it's a really unique adventure game that captures a specific time and place in New York City, 2003. It's really wonderful. It's really precise writing that varies between being funny and being astute about what it means to be a young writer or artist in New York City, trying to find your voice and navigating all of the seemingly like impossible complexities that come with social and emotional life in a big city when you're coming from a place that's much smaller, when you're simultaneously feeling like you're too big and you're too small for everywhere that you are. Really, I was very impressed with Perfect Tides, and it brought me a lot of joy. And I woke up thinking about it after the credits roll, which is always a good sign. If I'm thinking about something after I'm done with it, then I know that there's some impact. So yeah, that's what I literally just finished that last night.
I'm jealous. I have it on my Steam Deck on your recommendation. I plan on picking it up, but the Yakuza train, you just keep shoveling coal in because those boys get into some weird situations. But I'm so excited to actually start playing that. I heard about it from the Post Games podcast. Chris Plant's doing great work over there. I love this kind of era of the introspective millennial game. And it's so amazing. You said this game takes place in 2003. In New York City. You were actually named a 2009 Person of the Year from New York Theater. Are you able to look back 6 years and equate any of those experiences from Perfect Tides to your experience in New York City?
I mean, absolutely. And we might get into, this is actually, it's funny, this is related to the game that I want to talk about actually, but that 2009, okay, let's set some. So I came into New York City. I came to New York City in August of 2001. So if you've read your history books, that'll tell you some stuff right there.
Did something happen in?
Yeah, something kind of happened shortly right after that. But I showed up to the city with $20 in my pocket and crashed on a friend's couch. Basically, within a week, I had a job at a coffee shop, and I was there specifically to do theater and to do film. And then of course, what happens when you get into New York City? Well, you struggle to survive because everything's very expensive. And the experiences I had there in my 20s certainly led up to the award that I got in 2009, which was from NewYorkTheater.com, a now defunct website, unfortunately, but was a big mainstay in tracking the independent theater scene in New York City. It was founded by a man named Martin Denton, who is an incredible critic and lover of art and theater. And he basically single-handedly, I would say, created an indie theater scene by actually covering it. Because if you were doing independent theater in New York, you are not being covered traditionally.
And there's a lot of theater in New York. So it's not like the Times or anybody can cover all of the theater. We need that independent journalism to get the word out.
Yeah. And New York theater was an early stab at that. And they did things like they covered every show in the New York Fringe Festival, which at its heyday, that's hundreds of shows. And to get somebody to get actual reporters to every show to write about it is like a feat, especially
Herculean task. Yeah.
yeah. And they did it year after year. And one of the things that Martin started doing was doing this Person of the Year award, where he would give out a couple of different people who were like, hey, this theater artist has done a lot of really interesting and incredible work. 2009 was a year where I was cast in a solo show, speaking of blizzards, called The Dark Heart of Meteorology, which is about a weatherman slowly losing his mind as he confronts his father, who is also a weatherman. He confronts his father's manuscript about weather as a sentient force that wants to kill us all. It is an absurdist piece by Stephen Aubrey in the style of a lecture or a series of lectures, depending on the iteration. And I did the first. So this had been Dark Heart of Meteorology had been a bunch of like 12 to 15 minute little scenes from this guy going around the country giving lectures about the weather and about his family. And then this was the first time we combined a bunch of those into a 5-act structure full play. And it was the first time that I, as an actor, did the one-man show, which is its own daunting challenge. A lot of people, and obviously this is a very different one. This was not an autobiographical one-man show. This was a character. It had some filmed segments. Like I filmed a fake weather report, which was super fun. There was a lot of improvisation in it, so it like leaned on some of that. And it was a really good piece for me in terms of finally getting somewhere on a roadmap of like being an actor and like that people should pay attention to in the indie theater world. And also
like flexing those muscles, because it's so rare you get a chance to really bite into a role like that on stage and on film. So I bet that was pretty gratifying.
Yeah, it was really good for me in a lot of ways. And I had a lot of stuff that had been like, I think when I look back on it, this is the other thing about being young and that Perfect Tides kind of touches on as well, is that you don't often realize how incredible and how lucky a situation you might be is. So like there's a theater in New York called Center Stage that is owned by the Labyrinth Theater Company, which is Philip Seymour Hoffman's company. And one of the first time I got like a big leading role in New York City was playing Berenger and Rhinoceros on that stage, which is kind of bananas when you think about it. I was like something like 25 or 26, which is entirely too young to play that role, by the way. It's definitely like you need to be a little bit more of a middle-aged schlub for that part. But it was such a gift to be able to do that and to be in that stage and put that thing up. And just kind
you were
of
like
blindly.
a teenager playing Willie Loman in Death of a Salesman.
About as
people
close
were
as
like,
you can get to that.
Something doesn't quite fit. The suit's hanging off his body odd. The cuffs go past his fingers. And you're like, I'm a boy. Just let me do this.
Yeah, yeah. So I'd been able to do stuff like that before, but this was like a really first, like truly like start to land and like have a little bit of that acting voice. And then on top of that, I also had, I wrote a play called Adventure Quest, which was a play.
Well, you told me about this before. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a play in the style of an old school adventure game. So it featured, again, lucky stuff happening. We had an Emmy Award winning costume designer who knew the reference material and made us a set of EGA colored costumes. We had a set that was projected EGA graphics, those 16 colors from those old Sierra games. And the whole play is very much in the style of those games, with the main character walking up to people and saying things that you, the player, would put in a parser, like talk to man. And then the other actors playing all the NPCs who maybe had set speech, like a set speech that they would give. And then you could say like, ask about whatever topic, and they'd be like, "Oh, I don't know anything about that. I don't know anything about that." If you keep asking them, they keep
It's where
repeating the
you
like,
take every item and like use shovel on door, use shovel on kitchen, and it's
yeah, and you
whatever,
get
man.
a
I have to try everything.
yeah, and that's exactly. We actually had a scene like that too, where the characters like literally trying to combine every item in their inventory, and there was the omniscient voice that's like, "You can't do that. You can't do that." Over and over. Very funny, very like existential. We had a great cast, and it was part of the Brick Theater's anti-depression festival, and they then built a whole festival around it called the Video Game Festival. So there was
Sick.
this, yeah, which was it got yeah, it was, and it led to like there was a lot of video game theater after that, but I feel like we kind of came there first with Adventure Quest, so that was
Mhm.
also going on. I had done a couple of other plays that I just had a very busy year in 2009, so it was really cool to get that recognition from this big website that like actually covered indie theater and made it matter.
Well, and timely too, because 2007 to 2009, there were a lot more, I would say, art house and narrative games coming to AAA. The biggest one I can think of is BioShock. Really made people think about how video games can be used as a piece of art rather than just entertainment. So it's fun to see that the New York theater scene was running in parallel with that, thanks to you. You talking about moving to New York and not having any money to your name. When I first moved to Chicago, I was sleeping on the floor of a friend's apartment. And the first day I went on 5 auditions and I was like, cool, I'm going to get one of them. Maybe I'll get more. And I didn't get anything. And I remember coming back home and being like, well, I'm going to apply for jobs because I was waiting tables at TGI Fridays in downtown Chicago. So I was applying to jobs wherever I could. I was cooking ramen because like you, I came with a suitcase and $20 and I knew my spine was going to get aligned because I'm sleeping on the floor without a pillow or a blanket. But video games were a really great balm for me. It's something I knew that I could return to. Are there any games that you associate with moving to New York City that like maybe it could be an old favorite or a new game coming out? Was there anything that you remember from that time in your life?
So this is interesting. For me, video games were something that I played as a kid and were really important to me throughout high school, along with tabletop games too, like RPGs and stuff. And then when I got into college, I fell off a little bit because of the demands of the work and the social life that I was having there. When I first moved to the city, I didn't have much in the way of money. After 2009 is when I returned back into gaming after a bit of a hiatus from like, I would say maybe 1998 to 99,
Like
sometime
doing some
around there.
research for Adventure Quest?
A little bit, actually. Yeah. Like it kind of came back to me that like, I was, that Adventure Quest came about because I had a conversation with a good friend, Chris Chappelle, who ended up being the composer on it, who's brilliant. And we were talking about how funny it would be to like see somebody behaving in real life the way like a character in an adventure game behaves. And that just turned into a thing. And I just had, I wouldn't leave my brain. I had to write it. But yeah, it was also like me then thinking back on and starting to reflect on some of those experiences of what games meant to me when I was younger and why I was drawn to them. And it was shortly afterwards that I got back into gaming through Dragon Age Origins. So that's what I
Yes.
associate with maybe 2010 is like when I was gifted a PS3 on my birthday and was able to finally like dip back into essentially the spiritual successor game to Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, which were favorites of mine from back in the day. Yeah, so that's interesting. That is like when I think about video games specifically in my like in the New York aughts, I think about Dragon Age Origins, even though it's like sort of just after the aughts that it comes out for me, because that's how just like what my life would allow in terms of access to games and the time and ability to play them and think about them and reincorporate them into my life like any other artistic medium that I enjoy.
One of the things I love about Dragon Age Origins is hearing you talk about associating it with New York City life. That game for me came right after a really bad breakup. And at that time, I was like, I have all this time. I'm not pouring effort into somebody else. I'm not trying to save this relationship. So why don't I try to save Ferelden? Why don't I try to do all the origin stories and do everything? And that world has such a great way of letting you kind of stumble and trip, fall into it. Because every time you play it, there's a new side quest, there's a new origin story. You can decide, do I want to be friends with Morrigan? Do I want to go after Liliana? Alistair is a whole almost side game because you have to harden him so that he becomes the king. These RPGs are such a great way to look inward and put ourselves in situations that we could never possibly be in before. And as a theater artist, I think that you're adept at doing that, because when you scan a character, when you're verbing your script, when you're trying to figure out your motivations in your given circumstances, in a video game, it's sometimes just laid out for you and you truly get to role play. As an actor, do you find that role playing games do a good job of reinforcing those skills, or is it purely entertainment for you?
I think that the act of pretend is a fundamentally healthy act that more people should engage in. Like I joke sometimes that I majored in make believe, but I got there in part because of role playing games. I was an extremely shy kid. It was like 7th grade when I got introduced to second edition Dungeons and Dragons by a friend. And honestly, I can say my earliest attempts at acting are probably saying things in character at a table. And that I didn't actually act on stage until I was 16. I was in a Kurt Vonnegut play called The Express Line. I had 6 lines. The first one was, "What the hell is going on here?" Because I was playing cashier number 2, and
That's
won.
a big role. Everyone
actually
remembers Cashier 2 and Kurt Vonnegut's
The Express Line,
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to make sure that you
a
remembered
one-act
it.
play.
Yeah.
Sophomore year in high school. So I like, the funny thing was, like, I had this 6 line. I never acted before. I had this 6 line part, and I won like the best actor award. And I basically deadpan monotoned all my lines, and it was like somehow very funny. Yeah, so that was my first experience on stage, and I was like, okay, this is hard for me because I've been trained by my life to be so inward, but this is like really fascinating, and I'm getting something out of this, and this is a good thing for me to do. And now I think most people who meet me would consider me an extrovert and think of me as a pretty sociable person. And I think I can pin a lot of that on role-playing games, and I can pin a lot of that on acting. And I think those things are related. And I think that it's a fundamentally good and healthy thing to have done. And one of the reasons why I'm not in the same trap that I was maybe when I was a kid or when I was a teenager or even in my 20s. Like the act of play, of theater, of video games has been instrumental in making me a realized and functional adult and artist. And I think that that's like, I give a lot of credit to that. If I didn't have those opportunities, I don't know that I would be that. I think I would still be a mess in a lot of ways. I still feel like a mess a lot of the time, but I feel like there's also a great degree of mental health benefits I've received from playing.
I mean,
In all
make
its
believe
forms.
is just empathy, right? It's
Yeah.
trying to put yourself into somebody else's shoes and trying to figure out how they organically respond to a situation. I always find it funny because in RPGs, I either want to make me as close to like the idealized version for this world and then play as me responding to the situation, or I want to be like Karlach in Baldur's Gate and just rip shit up and like do whatever the hell I want. But it's that active make believe. It's that playing along. It's that sense of play that I really love about games. And the games that I tend to bounce off of, it's because I'm not playing. The game is railroading me or really forcing me to think about a situation in just one way. But these point and click adventure games, a lot of the times they would reward your imagination. And I haven't played the game that you want to talk about today, but I think about Monkey Island. I think about, what's the one that came out from Double Fine not too long ago? Elijah Wood was in it. Broken Age. Broken Age was another one that was reminiscent of that point and click adventure era. And something was lost, man. Like the closest we have now is Disco Elysium, which is brilliant. but I'm really excited to hear about the game that you brought for us today. Before we get into that, I am going to go to our Metro. So let's go through here.
Can I say
Ladies
like
and
one thing really
yeah,
quickly before we midtro? Because I do want to say like there are some really good heirs to the adventure game before we dig into this. And I
please.
will point people towards Wadget Eye. Old Skies was my game of the year in 2025. I also want to point people at a game called Rosewater. There's some really, and obviously Perfect Tides, which I just talked about, Perfect Tides Station to Station. This is a genre that is alive and well now. So I want to make that clear to people that you should, like, there are iterations that are harkening back. Okay.
You just need to know where to find it.
Yeah, you just need, and now you know where to look.
And
now
I
go
will
back
put
to
a link to those games in
yeah, those
the
three.
show description.
Those three in particular, I think, worth checking out.
Yeah, I got to get on that Old Skies train because I know when it came to Game of the Year discussions for Gamers with Jobs, I bought it. It's on the Steam Deck. It's just time. The Last Save Lounge is supported by Patreon at patreon.com/hoodieweather. By supporting Hoodie Weather, patrons get a bonus segment each week, a bundle of Hoodie Weather games, and ad-free episodes in your feeds. If times are tough, we think you are too. You can still support The Last Save Lounge by rating and reviewing us on your podcast app of choice. Tell your friends, tell your enemies. We are not picky. I will take your rivals and I will cuddle them with warmth and kindness, and we'll all be friends talking about video games. But if you don't want to listen to The Last Save Lounge, you can also see video versions on Spotify and YouTube. We have subtitles and transcripts for every episode for accessibility, and we would love to have you. So coming back into the show with New York City's Richard Lovejoy. Rich, what is your favorite game of all time?
Yeah, so this is a favorite is always like a hard question, but I'm gonna
Favorite today.
We're gonna talk about, and to me, this is like kind of an impact, and we've covered some of why it's had such a profound impact on my life. But my favorite is going to be King's Quest III to Heir Is Human, and that is first of all first video game I ever played with a pun in the title.
Is it Heir like a
Heir, like
kingdom's heir?
Heir? Yeah,
Perfect.
Terrific.
This explains a lot about you. Go on.
And this was in maybe one of the first games I ever played. Certainly not the first. My first video game system was a little something called the Coco Max 3, which was an actual computer that was like an alternate to a Tandy. You know, if you didn't want to give Microsoft money back in the day, the Coco Max 3 was.
It just sounds like you're saying words now.
It does sound like I'm saying.
What's a Tandy?
Tandy was also a thing. I'm also betraying my Gen X nature of like remembering these specific machines as a kid. My dad was a little bit of a tech head, which is how we ended up with the Coco Max, because it's one of those things where did not obviously end up being the system that won out, but its thing was that it had like way more colors available to it. Like everything else was limited to 4 or 16 colors at the time, and the Coco Max had a bunch.
Coco Max did what Nintendo.
Coco Max did. There you go. It had way more colors than that. And yet, like the first game I remember playing on it, and maybe my brain is a little crossed in this, but my memory is that I played one of my earliest games on it, aside from the Seventh Link, which is an obscure RPG that it was an Ultima-like that nobody has heard of, is King's Quest III to Heir Is Human. And this piece, aside from leading to ultimately to me writing the play Adventure Quest, also led to me first being published on the Gamers with Jobs forum. I did a piece called The Locked Door Puzzle, which I wrote as part of a show in New York City called No You Tell It, where you write a personal story about something and then somebody else reads that story, which was an interesting event worth checking out. There's some amazing stuff on it. And that is where I wrote the first draft of a story called The Locked Door Puzzle, which was then published later on the Gamers with Jobs forum, and is about my experience growing up as a kid and how I sort of navigated and survived my childhood, because the computer in our house was in my bedroom. So when
the whole family.
Yeah, that everyone in the family used, which I think that fact alone maybe says something about the way, I didn't have privacy or autonomy as a kid necessarily. But when everybody was asleep, I did. And that's where my gaming habit began, was like middle of the night gaming sessions, because I could just close my door, turn the lights out, and pretend, put a little blanket under the crack of the door so it doesn't look like there's anything happening, and turn on the computer and play a video game. And so I have this memory of wandering around as Prince Alexander, who is captured at the beginning of the game by a wizard named Minanan, who is terrible and just a tyrant and a monster. And the whole first act of that game is trying to, while you're doing errands for this wizard, trying to like steal his. He has a spell that can create a cookie that can make anybody who eats it turn into a cat. So your whole thing is to try to get like all the ingredients for the spell and like sneakily do it, and then crumble the cookie into his porridge so that he turns into a cat and you escape. It's like one of the early like first act of this, which was what my short story is about. The locked door puzzle is about like that in relation to my own life growing up, and like the parallels there, because there was some, it hit me in a way when I was playing it as like a kid, but I didn't have words to articulate it, which then as an adult I later did. There's something to King's Quest 3 that has been such a linchpin in my creative work. I think it's maybe I would combine that with maybe Twin Peaks as like the two biggest creative influences on me in terms of things that have affected my sensibility. Twin Peaks made me comfortable with ambiguity. I watched it in 6th grade, which was like too young
No,
to
I
do
think
that.
that's what David Lynch wanted. He was like, this is for all the 6th graders out there, none of the adults.
But there's, to that point, there was a thing growing up where I very much felt like there was so much emptiness to the traditional TV formats. I was seeing these like 30 minutes, like conflict comes up, conflict resolved, return to state of normal. Like that was how shows were back in that day. And that was kind of like flat and boring to me. And then Twin Peaks was not that. So it's like this other creative possibility existed, which is, a reason why I'm drawn to making like TV and theater too, is because it's like, oh, what can I do? I don't have to do what everybody else is doing. I can do whatever I want, and it can be like really interesting. It's one of the reasons like I bristle sometimes when people are like immediately like gut react, don't like a thing that's doing something unique, because a part of me just wants to be like, no, your distaste for this thing is because we've all been trained to expect one thing, and this is giving you something else.
There's an intentionality behind you feeling that way, that if you sit with it, it's going to be better than you rejecting it and going back to your safe space.
Yeah, you got it. Exactly it. So Twin Peaks, big influence on me, but also this game that I played as a kid that was, on the surface, a pretty hilarious and ridiculous thing of like, being an orphan who's been indentured to an evil wizard and trying to put together a cookie to turn that wizard into a cat so that you can escape and find your true home. Like that's kind of a silly thing, but there's an emotional life under that, and an interiority that is implied in the game, even if it's not in the written text, of like, this kid was kidnapped by this wizard and just has to like do all these tasks. And like, that is they're not human. They don't get to be a person. They don't get to have agency. And so that's like a big thing that I think about a lot in my work, is like, what is agency? Like, where do we have space to have agency? And you can imagine as a kid who's like waking up in the middle of the night to play a computer game, like that's pretty powerful stuff. Or is the beginning of like, that's why this game resonates for me. It's also like very funny in a way that these old Sierra games could be, with their casual cruelty and the way that you can just die at the drop of a hat.
Yeah, I was going to say auto death. If you take a wrong step, it's like, well, that's 2 hours down the drain.
If you didn't save it. Yeah. And like, there is one of the ways that would happen in that game is there is this cat that's like the wizard's cat. And if the cat is on the stairwell, and you try to like move down like the stone stairwell, you will trip and fall to your death. You'll trip over the cat. And so you have to be like extremely aware of like where the cat is. Cause if it's in a place that you could fall, your character will die. It's just like moving past him. No reason. Yeah. There's no like other.
Just like real life.
Yeah. Just like real life. The cat's on the stairway and you trip on it, you might die. Yeah. which is also just one gets the sense that Rebecca Williams may not have loved cats the way that I do. But yeah, so that's how King's Quest 3 unknowingly to me like planted the seeds for some of my biggest artistic, beats of my life, I should say. Like, yeah, these are the things that kind of broke through and took me to the next stage of how I was thinking about my own work and what I was pulling together. I will also say that Adventure Quest came back in 2016. I took it to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, which was also a big life event too, and had its own unique challenges. And it was super fun to revisit that piece and cut it down and make it even better and collaborate with my wife on it, which is what we did. She directed it. And, it was an insane play to bring to that Fringe Festival because you're traveling with a cast of 7, which is too many people. That's why every show in the Edinburgh Fringe Festival tends to be 1 or 2
One
or
man.
3.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's much easier to take 1 person over than it is to care for 7.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was super fun and, intense, but a really good experience that was an early test for my wife and I pulling together like some really impossible stuff with no support or limited support from a producer and just like making it work on our own. And despite the kind of short end of the stick we had ended up drawing, which was great. And also like a growth moment for me as an artist too, like cutting that play back that had been such a success and like learning to like let go of your babies and change things and make something that was good even better. Like that's a big deal and it's hard to do.
That's growth. And there was no cats on the stairs, which is a safety precaution at this point, but it's good that it never happened. It's so lovely to hear that a game from your youth has kind of acted as a through line for this artistic career that you've carved out for yourself. I'm picturing in my mind, because I did something similar. I remember when I got in my room, I moved my Super Nintendo in there. I think I spent a lot of my time playing Secret of Mana, similarly to you, just putting a towel by the door so there'd be no light shining into the hallway underneath so my parents couldn't come in and say, go to bed. But I'm picturing little Rich Lovejoy and dyed hair and all, awesome blue dyed hair, glasses, just like sitting up, maneuvering this mouse around, swearing at cats. And in the film version of this, we do like a star swipe, and there you are with Adventure Quests, and you're blocking things out, and you're trying to pitch the idea to your production team, and then you pull down a slide, and it's just the cat on the stair, and everyone else around you is like, this fucking cat. Is there anything about that experience expressionistically, if we're going to use a theater term? Are there any moods, any songs, any colors that you associate with that time in your life?
I don't have a ton of childhood memories is a thing that I am, just to be completely open and transparent, because I feel like this is the type of show where you can do that. I am a diagnosed CPTSD and I have memory fragmentation from my youth. That is something that I'm like actively working on. So, this is one of the memories that I do have though, is like those late night gaming sessions and even like daytime too. Like we were allowed to play games in my house, like it was, my father got us a Coco Max 3, like it was that, there was a Nintendo in the house. There were games available. So it was a big part of my childhood. And it is a part that I do remember. But even in terms of like being a touchstone for artistic stuff, like it went even further than that too. I had a play in 2012 called Brain Explode, which was a play that let the audience control the main character. Like they basically acted like a text adventure, but the difference was they could tell him to do whatever they wanted. And we had 3 actors in the show who are all extremely game. And it was a really imaginative piece that came about in part because of King's Quest, much like Adventure Quest did, even though it's, slightly different genre. The text adventure was like the starting point for Brain Explode. But there was a sequence in it where this one character is in the play, which is a game that people are controlling, also playing a game where he's trying to help a second character get through an obstacle. And
So
all
meta.
he can, well, it's very like down the rabbit hole. And he has a piece of chalk, and on the ground, he can draw a picture of something like an object and give it to her, and she can use that to deal with the problems. And so like the first problem she has is like she's being chased by wolves, And so he would, like, the audio person controlling them would draw like an axe, or one night a horse to trot away. And our sound designer, who had like hundreds of sound effects and improvise, putting in whatever the person would say, a machine gun, and the actors would act it out. And it was always like such a piece of theater magic because there was the sound. Like, the person said a horse, we drew a horse on the ground, she jumped on a horse, and you heard the galloping. It's like kind of an incredible thing, because it's like, how are they doing that? And it's like just some theater magic, and thinking about games and like having possibility spaces. And so many of these games, like, the interesting thing about them is, where are you allowed to maneuver and where are you not allowed to maneuver?
Mm-hmm.
Like, an adventure game makes such an excellent existential piece because there is an illusion of freedom. You move the plot forward by solving the puzzle in a specific way, and you can seemingly do anything in the parser, but you're actually very limited. And like, every game is like that, and every game is thinking about things like that. And then we tie that back into a theme about agency, and there you go. And that's why that's like a pet theme of mine that I come back to in like almost all my work is agency. Like, what do we have the power to actually do, and where are the limitations, and what does that mean emotionally, spiritually, intellectually? Like, how do we deal with this in process, and how do we create new possibility spaces?
Mm-hmm. So that makes me think of Tears of the Kingdom, just because they give you a sandbox and they say you can realistically do whatever you want with these tools, but we're not going to give you a one size fits all option. Like, it's up for you to figure out how you want to solve this. And much like a parser in these old text-based games, you have everything you need to solve the situation, but you need to think about, what is the game asking me to do? And how can I use that language to talk to the game to get to that solution? And obviously, every game is kind of giving you a language or a tool set, but there's something about theater where the person you see on stage, the like MC or the host. I did improv and hosted my own show here in Chicago for years and years. We did a show called The Geek Show. That was an interview show. It was kind of like a late night show. There were video segments. We did one once where we did a Muppet theme, where we did a Muppet music video. We filmed it for 2 weeks before the show began. And then as the video ended, we came into the theater and it was seamless. And much like games, there was so much that had to happen for that one magical moment to like come off. But I'm the one on stage. I'm the one getting the applause. And there's so much work, and there's so much calibration. There's so much fine tuning that needs to go in just to make all the rest of the elements seem invisible, that I think the two are definitely in conversation with each other. When you play these games, I noticed that you're the type of person, and I'm this person too, that really loves to acknowledge the work behind them all. I think being a theater person lends you to think about the stage crew, the orchestra, the tech, the spotlight, everyone that goes into making a successful production. I didn't really have a question about that. I just think that they're fun parallels.
I mean, I do think that there's a reason that the theater major to project manager pipeline is incredibly real. It's very funny the extent to which I thought majoring in theater would not be useful as like a classic job, but it's like actually the secret sauce that makes me a good employee. Like, in any place
But
that I've ever
it's
worked.
true, because one, theater teaches you to be on time. Theater teaches you that if you are not in your space, all these other people are going to suffer because of it. And also, in the event that you're on the other side of it and somebody does not hit their mark, you need to learn how to pivot. You need to learn how to close the curtain early, or stay on stage for a line, or like maybe vamp for a little bit. There's a
But yeah,
lot.
solve the problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I always joke, because I went to school for musical theater, so I can do everything you can do and sing. But really, it reinforces that project management attitude. And maybe that's why I love RPGs with a big party system. Maybe that's why I love making sure that Morrigan gets along with Alistair in Dragon Age Origins. There has to be some through line there. It can't all be disparately connected, right?
Yeah, I think there's a through line there for sure. And it's like also one of my favorite things to take 4 to 6 people and send them into a dungeon. That's just
Yes.
like, that just speaks to my soul.
It's a team building exercise.
Yeah. 4 to 6 people with varying degrees of talents and abilities. Yeah. Send those people into a dungeon.
Is there anything else you want to promote before I get to our closing thought?
Yeah, I think people should find me on Blue Sky, is like the one social media place where I'm still existing. I am the Harpo Marxist. That's like Harpo Marx, the Harpo Marxist, all one word, all no spaces, just like one run-on word at Blue Sky. You'll recognize my profile picture as a blue mohawk, so that's easy to spot. And I have some examples of work up there. So if you want to see a short film I did, if you want to see a play I did, and of course a link to Gamers with Jobs is there just like right on my bio. So that's easy to find some of the work. The short film is a short film called Push Up. It is not game related in any way, but it does feature Dark Souls 3. So I guess maybe it is game related.
It all comes back, right?
Yeah, it all does come back. There's a very good use of Dark Souls 3 in my short film Push Up, but don't watch it at work is what I'll say about that one.
Interesting. NSFW do not work. You know, it just don't work. Just go on a general strike. That'll be fun. Rich.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
Oh, yeah. And the play, though, you can totally, that's I play Lovejoy on Lovejoy, which I think we might talk about, actually. So I'll hold that.
For Patreon listeners, the bonus segment this week is talking to Rich about Lovejoy and Lovejoy, the story of his abolitionist ancestor, which we talked a little bit on Gamers with Jobs, but I want to dig in a bit. Rich, I want to leave our listeners with, you gave some really great similar games to King's Quest III. Obviously, King's Quest III might be a little bit difficult to play now, considering it's an old Sierra Online game. For folks that are looking for games in the same oeuvre, I know you brought up Old Skies and a few others. Can you just talk a little bit about some of the similar games, or maybe just one to recommend to the audience?
Yeah, I mean, Old Skies, Rosewater are both at perfect tied station to station. Honestly, don't worry about playing. It's a sequel, but you don't have to play the original. It's like a really solid on its own type of thing. To give like one more, The Unavowed is a Wadjet game that very much broke through, is also New York City based, to the extent where that the theater in that game, one of the background stories you can give the main character is actor, which is super fun. And the theater there is actually a combination of two different indie theaters in New York City. One, the Brick, which is where Adventure Quest first premiered. That's what the interior of that space is, 100% the Brick. The exterior is a place called Under St. Mark's, which is still in operation. Both the Brick and Under St. Mark's are in operation to this day. And then you'll see, if you play the Avowed, Under the Bricks Theater, if you play the actor background. So I 100% recommend doing that. I think there is a set piece there, even if you do not play the actor background. The story will take you there, but play the actor background and you'll get to see it earlier. So that's going to be my recommendation.
Man, I feel like I'm going to cozy up in bed with the Steam Deck and just drill through all of these point and click adventure games. It's not usually my bag, but it's so cold outside. I need to stretch out and try some of these other games. All right, folks. For regular listeners, that's going to do it for us. Thank you so much for listening to the Last Save Lounge. I hope you enjoyed it just as much as I did. Rich, thank you so much for coming on and giving us some of your time on this Monday in January. Woof. Last Save Lounge is produced by Hoodie Weather, creating comfy games and podcasts broken in like your favorite hoodie. You can support Hoodie Weather by heading to patreon.com/Hoodie Weather and becoming a patron for just $1. It's fun. It helps the show go on. But if you don't have any bucks to toss our way, a rating and review on your podcaster of choice would be sorely appreciated. Rich, again, thank you so much for coming on. And without further ado, we're going to get on to our Patreon bonus segment.